Welcome back to the Unraveled Podcast. My name is Nina.
And my name's Alina. So with all the new NAR changes due to the settlement that recently happened, I'm curious to know kind of what you think about it. What's your opinion? Yeah.
So I personally have kind of mixed feelings, views on it.
Okay.
So I'm going to look at it from the realtor side first and then the consumer side. So for me, as a realtor or real estate agent, I think it's a great thing. So here in the state of Georgia, commissions, compensation, concessions, however you want to call it, that has always been negotiable, for the longest time now.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I feel like we should probably explain what the changes are.
Yes.
So then that way the consumers understand what we're talking about. So do you want to take it?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. So basically, there was a large settlement that NAR, NAR stands for National Association of Realtors. Basically, they are over us realtors in the capacity of...
So the bottom line is that there were some attorneys that got together, some sellers that got together the sellers were frustrated and thought it was unfair that they had to pay for the commission for an agent that brought a buyer. So long story short, there was a big lawsuit, class action, NAR settled, and the result of that is there's some rules and regulations that are put in place across all states to regulate that. So technically, commissions in some states, I guess, were not negotiable. Here in Georgia, they have always been negotiable for, as long as I can
remember, right? Thank you for explaining that as well. That was beautiful. But also our forms are apparently completely different. I know our forms vary from state to state, but apparently we also in Georgia have the most secure forms in any other state, which even states on there like who pays what. And again, it's been very clear that commissions have always been negotiable in Georgia at least, but it could be it could vary depend on how agents have that conversation with their clients that make them presume otherwise.
Yeah. So when it comes to the changes in Georgia, the primary thing is that compensation is not allowed to be listed in the MLS. So if an agent's in the MLS, they're looking at a piece of property or a house for their client, it's not going to say there what the compensation is. It's going to need to be negotiated with the offer. There's additional paperwork that's going to be required, which protects the consumer. And all of that, I think, is very good.
Yeah.
So when it comes to our side of things, I think the change is great because it's going to require agents to do a better job, to represent their clients better, to offer more value, and just to be a little bit more diligent. Their technique needs to be better, their knowledge, their skill, all of that. So in that way, I think it's a great change because it's going to separate those great agents that provide value from those that were really just winging it in a way. But when it comes to the consumer, that's where I think they're going to be the ones that end up getting hurt in the long run. I think the media is kind of putting it out there that realtors' jobs are going to go away or realtors are going to be the ones that suffer. I actually think the consumer is going to be the one suffering. And probably there may or may not be a lawsuit the other way where there might be scenarios, maybe a seller is not offering any kind of compensation to a buyer's agent and a buyer chooses to go directly to the listing agent or directly to the seller. They don't have representation. What does that look like when it comes to buying a house? If you don't have representation, you don't get an inspection. If you're not knowledgeable in the process and you make mistakes or things just because you don't know what to look for, and then you turn around later and you have a house that maybe needs repair or things weren't disclosed, there's many different ways it could go wrong. So I think that's where I'm curious to see how that pans out. Now, if it's a great listing agent, hopefully you don't run into that problem, but still understanding that listing agent is representing the seller. What do you think? People make a big deal about it, and part of it is a big deal, but part of it, not that much has changed, at least for Georgia.
Agreed. I agree. Nothing for Georgia. I feel like nothing has changed. Are there certain requirements that we now have to do things a little differently? Absolutely. I feel like that's where the change is, such as having to have a buyer sign some form of agreement before they tour a home, which can either be an exclusive representation agreement, buyer brokerage agreement, whatever you want to call it, or a customer agreement. I have always loved that idea. I think it's great because number one, it shows how committed a buyer is before they even go look at a home. And if it's something they really want to do, or if they're just wasting, your time and honestly their time as well. Or if they're truly interested in purchasing a home.
Yeah.
I think that it certainly kind of weeds out a lot of the people who are just using real estate agents to look at real estate. I think there's this like stigma that real estate agents are only good for opening doors. We're only good for showing real estate. But honestly, like we're so much more than that. We hold a much more value than that. And because us as real estate agents have set the standard over years that you can just call and we'll go open a door for you and show you a house. No problem. We don't charge anything for that. But it's our time. We do charge our time for that. And it's been nice to be able to weed out some buyers who just want to go look at real estate because they don't want to sign an agreement. And I don't even send them an exclusive representation agreement. I don't feel comfortable sending someone an exclusive representation agreement that has never met me before. I feel like that's locking them into something that they don't know if they want to do. Well, basically locking them to me when they don't even know if my personality, if we're going to work well together. So what I've been doing is sending them customer agreements, and I tell them like, hey, I'm going to send you a customer agreement to sign. If we don't get the opportunity to have a buyer consultation in person beforehand, I'll send you a customer agreement to sign. That way you're not locked into me. You can get to know me a little more. And if you decide you want to work with me and you want representation, I'll send you a different form of an agreement.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to lock you in to use me just to go look at a home. But again, even having them sign some form of agreement shows their level of commitment and their interest into truly wanting to purchase real estate. And again, it just weeds out those people that are just wanting to go, quickly go look at a home just because they find it interesting kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I really hope that all agents truly follow this rule. I mean, I think at the end of the day, in any industry, you have some people that don't follow all the rules and they kind of half-ass it for lack of words. And I really hope that agents follow this rule because then you'll have those customers that are like, oh, this agent said they could show it to me. I didn't have to sign anything. Well, I'm sorry, but they just aren't following the rules. And truly, is that the kind of representation that you want? Do you really want an agent who doesn't follow the rules? Because at that point, they're looking out for their interests, not yours.
Yeah.
And if that's where you want to take it, then by all means, that's fine. I don't really care. But it resets the standards for realtors.
Yeah.
So I really hope that every agent takes this seriously. For us as a whole, not just for themselves, to make us as realtors look more professional, that we're all abiding by the same rules.
That's definitely true. And I think it's more important than ever for, if you're a buyer or consumer, to really think about who you're wanting to work with as a realtor. Because you're right. A lot of realtors used to say, oh, it's free to work with a buyer's agent. No, nothing in this world is free.
No.
Right? But not only that, it's just, technically there's thousands and tens of thousands of realtors all over the place. I joke that, everyone is a realtor, right?
Athens alone has 1,500, but only, I think, maybe a fourth of them are actually producing.
Yeah, and then of those people that are producing, who's actually experienced, who's actually able to properly represent you.
Correct.
Those margins get slimmer and slimmer, But understanding that just because someone's a realtor or real estate agent, it doesn't mean that they represent actual excellence.
Yeah.
So doing your due diligence and interviewing agents to represent you when you're purchasing a house, that's an important thing because it is a big deal. You want to make sure you get somebody who will represent you correctly, but then also prioritize you. So let's say there's a scenario where I'm working with the buyer, we have an agreement together, we're looking at houses, there might be a house that the seller is not offering any kind of compensation. Well, someone like me, I'm not going to stop you from buying your forever home just because that seller is not offering to pay me.
Right.
There might be agents that do that, which this is the whole problem, right? So it's very important to just be selective. Know who you're working with. Number one, do you get along? But then also, are they ethical?
Yes.
Do they want your best interest? Because this is going to make or break the whole experience for you.
But also just doing your due diligence in terms of, like you said, interviewing agents and making sure they're a good fit, but also on what's going on with the settlement to verify whatever the agent's telling you is true and what those new requirements are. Because some agents may take advantage of it and tell you this has to be done when it really doesn't.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, when you're picking an exclusive agent to represent you, that is going to be your agent. That is supposed to be your person that you're supposed to trust. And I have sent my clients the article, my customers that are not clients, the article in regards to the NAR settlement. But I also tell them, like, do your own research. Like, I want you to look this up. I want you to be familiar with what's going on.
Yeah.
And number one, it verifies what I've already told you, and it helps reestablish that trust.
Yeah.
But also it allows you a sense of security to know that I did tell you the right things and that you've done your own research and they line up with what I've already told you.
Correct. Yeah. Just unless you know the agent well, unless you've worked with them in the past, just don't take anything at face value. And also, don't just believe whatever you see on the news also. Because, quite frankly, they want headlines that will sell, that will get viewers.
That's fair.
Is it always the truth? No. So asking someone who you know and trust what actually is going on, that's probably going to be your best asset. Because, again, there's lawsuits all the time in real estate. There will probably continue to be lawsuits till the end of time.
Right.
But as somebody who's now active in this market, who's working with buyers and sellers every single day, things are not really changing that much.
Yep.
It's just now requiring agents to be at a higher standard.
Agreed.
And for the consumer to just ask more thoughtful questions when talking with an agent.
Yeah. But also for the consumers to hopefully view our role as more prominent and better than, and more than just opening doors.
Oh, yeah.
I think for me, that's a really big thing for me. Because I've seen so much negative comments and so much negative feedbacks about how useless real estate agents are and blase on social media, with this whole NAR lawsuit. And it's negative, but it's also discouraging because that's the standard that we've set as realtors. So I'm really hoping that it changes, that we as realtors can change that standard, and put out to the public, hey, we're more than this, we're better than this, and we actually do hold more value than kind of just opening doors.
Yeah. I mean, the truth is, like in any industry, you might go to a restaurant, it's horrible. You might go to another restaurant, that's amazing. Across anything that you pay for.
You're right.
A service that you choose to give your money and get something in exchange. Same way with realtors. There are some that are terrible. Really, truly. That's the honest truth. Yeah. But there are some that they have worked hard to know the information, to know the area, to help you achieve your home goals, whether it's buying or selling. And it's just a matter of finding those people.
Right.
And hopefully we're here on this podcast trying to educate the consumer on there are really excellent people out there.
Yeah.
You just have to know the difference between what that looks like and the average Joe Blow who could easily get his license,
Correct.
Because that is night and day.
Correct.
Completely.
Let me ask you a fun question. Have you had any pushback from consumers in regards to signing a buyer brokerage agreement or a buyer, any form of agreement before touring properties? Have you dealt with that at all?
So I've dealt with that, but not necessarily pushback, more conversations. Because I think a lot of my clients, they were looking at what the media was telling them, which, like I said, is not accurate to what's actually going on. And each state is a little bit different too. So once I have conversations with them and explain how it works and the value there, but these people also, they know the value that I bring. And so once we have that conversation, there's no issue at all.
Perfect. So it's funny, you're having better success than me. I've, out of the 7 or 8 inquiries I've had over the last 2 weeks, maybe I've lost more than half of them because they didn't want to sign any form of agreement. And I've probably only had 3 of them actually sign one were totally okay with it. They didn't even question it. And again, just a customer agreement, not a exclusive representation agreement. And the other amount that did not refuse to sign it. I'll just give you one example. One guy was like, which again, did not know this guy. He just inquired, wanted to look at some property. I was like, awesome. Okay. I'll schedule it for you. But just so you're aware, do you have to have some form of representation agreement signed prior to your showing? I'm only going to send you a customer agreement so you don't feel like you have to exclusively use me. Here's why this is a new requirement for realtors that realtors have to follow due to the NAR settlement. Here's the link for it. He was like, I'd honestly prefer not to sign anything. And I was like, I'm sorry. I would prefer that you don't have to either. It'd be a lot easier for me to not have to draft up this paperwork. But unfortunately, it's not my choice. I don't get to make that decision to not let you sign anything. This is a requirement across the board. So even if you call another real estate agent, they should be applying by the same rules. But I have no choice over this. I'm doing my best to follow the rules, blah, 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 whatever. And he was like, well, don't even send it to me. Just lose my number. And I was like, I'm thinking, you don't have to be that aggressive. Like, I'm sorry it's this way. Real estate is changing. It's not what it was, even 2 weeks ago. But I mean, either everybody's going to have to hop on this bandwagon and we all ride this roller coaster together. Yeah. Or just don't buy any real estate. He was like, he's like, I just won't buy anything. And I was like, dang, is it that big of a deal? And I told him, like, just look at the agreement. It's not that bad. It's not, nothing has really changed about the agreement other than a little bit of the verbiage. But I was like, just look at it. It takes you 10 minutes to look at it. And he was like, no, I'm not looking at it. I was like, you know what? It's okay. At that point, if I'm having to, I wouldn't even say argue. Like, if I'm having this much riffraff with you on signing an agreement and you've already made the decision to not purchase real estate over it, like, that's okay. We probably wouldn't have been a good fit anyways. No. Because if this is the beginning stages of the difficulties, I don't even want to see what the end result's going to look like.
See, but this is where I'm actually glad on our side, because there's countless times in the past with people that know full well that they can take advantage of a real estate agent. They lie and they pretend that they don't have an agent, or their agent is too lazy to drive and show them the house.
That is such a good point.
So you end up having, as a listing agent, you have your time wasted constantly. And these people, they're just lying through their teeth. But now they're upset because they can no longer do that.
That is such a valid point.
So that's why I said some things I think are excellent.
And the crazy thing is that their agent had called us and said, hey, I'm out of town. Do you mind showing this to the client? We would hop on it. At the end of the day, our job is to sell the home. Like, I don't care if I show it or you show it. Whatever gets the job done, we would happily show it. Correct. But it's the problem when you're trying to go around
the liars.
Yeah.
See, that's liars will be mad. That's okay with me.
This is true. But I think it's definitely going to weed out some it's definitely going to weed out some buyers that are just not serious. And also some real estate agents that aren't serious about the industry as well. I'm seeing so many posts and comments on the real estate agent sides that buyer agents are leaving. I even saw a post the other day that I had to it was in this large Facebook group with real estate agents about how I had to turn away 10 buyers from my open house.
I saw that.
I was like, clearly you didn't read up on how this works and what the requirements are. Again, your lack of knowledge and your lack of research. I took 3 classes on this NAR settlement thing, so I knew fully how this worked. And I'm like, you turned away 10 buyers from your open house, however much it was, because you didn't fully educate yourself on how this works. And it's funny, all the other realtors that did are like going at this person and saying like, you're lack the knowledge and da. And hopefully after they've been attacked, they will go back and do some research. But again, like,
educated, but again, it goes back to what I said before. It shows you there are some agents that are just too lazy to educate themselves, or they don't care enough to educate themselves on what's going on, how to properly represent their clients. So you have someone who's listed a piece of property who has no clue, obviously, about what's going on. So that seller could have missed out on one or more offers that could have come from that open house because their agent was not educated.
Correct. That's actually a very good point. Again, lack of knowledge.
So it really matters who you hire, huh?
Correct. It does. It really does. So, but we talk about that all the time, and this is just another one of those re-emphasizing how important it is, just in another different way. Yeah. Especially with these large changes coming.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think that wraps up our time for today. Thank you again for joining us. We release a new episode each Wednesday. You can follow us on social media and listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts.